This is Distant Replay, the podcast that goes back in time to relive all the greatest events that we witnessed in sports. From upsets, to championships, to cultural moments, we discuss it all. Coming up on today's episode.
Now and they're in the stretch. It's Secretariat. Secretariat on the outside to take the lead. Sham holding in second. It's Secretariat moving away. He has it by 2.5. Sham then on the outside, our native. At the wire, it's going to be Secretariat. He wins it by 2 lengths. Sham is second. Our native third by a length. Borgo is fourth. Restless Jet is fifth. And it looked like Navajo might have gotten up for sixth.
Taking you back to May 5th, 1973. It was the day of the Kentucky Derby. Derby Day, 1973, and it was a heck of a race, one that goes down in the history books, and we're using it as this episode of Distant Replay. What we're going to do this summer, we're recording this right before the 2021 Kentucky Derby runs, but our plan this summer is to go through Secretariat's run and Triple Crown. So before each of the races, we will go back to Secretariat's run in 73 and watch them each race by race. Tonight, we will do the Kentucky Derby first. So we're ready to kick it off. And Mike, I mean, look, for people that listen, they know you're a Mets guy, a Jets guy. They know I'm an Alabama guy, but they might not know that we do enjoy some horse racing.
You know what, Ben? That did cross my mind when we decided to do Secretariat's run here to the Triple Crown. That I think our audience knows a lot about our sports tastes, but I don't think horse racing has ever come up. So I'm looking forward to sharing that side of our sports fandom with everyone.
Like, I wouldn't say that we're guys that are just, at the track every weekend or like following horse racing year round, but we've been known to wander off to an OTB in Bristol before.
Wander off to an OTB in Bristol for sure. And I can tell you, Ben, I don't know about you, but other than I've been fortunate to be able to go to an SEC football game, thanks to you, multiple. Other than SEC football, you stick me at a horse racing track for an afternoon on a nice day, and there's pretty much no other sporting event I'd rather be at.
Yeah, I've never been to any of the Triple Crown races. It's on my list to do. I haven't done it. I've been to Keeneland, saw some races there. It's a really cool experience. But I agree, it's a different vibe, really laid back. I love that there's not a pressure to have to be betting constantly, right? You have like 30 minutes to get your bets together, but it goes by pretty quickly. And you can drink the entire time. Beautiful day. Yeah, I mean, spending an afternoon at a track is a lot of fun. So we're going to go back to what they were doing in 73 today on the episode. And we're going to put the race. It's in five different parts on YouTube. So it's the CBS broadcast as it aired in 73. We'll put it on our website, distantreplaypodcast.com, so you can go back and watch the entire broadcast as it aired. You can also connect on Twitter, Instagram, and on YouTube as well. So make sure you rate, review, subscribe, all that stuff. Follow us wherever you are. We would appreciate that. So let's go back to 73, Mike. And I don't know, where do you want to start with 73? Probably, I guess, kind of explaining where Secretariat is. And I know you've read a lot about Secretariat, pretty familiar with his background, but he was the horse of the year in 72 and had all the expectations heading into 73, right?
All the expectations. So the question leading into this Kentucky Derby is he the super horse that everyone thought during the 1972 campaign? All right. He's the horse of the year in 72. He loses the Wood Memorial 2 weeks before this Kentucky Derby. So the Wood Memorial, a prep race for the Kentucky Derby, a very popular one, ran at Aqueduct Racetrack in New York. He loses the Wood Memorial, actually comes in third place in that race. So now it's hey, did our eyes deceive us in 72? Is this horse still a super horse? And we're going to find that out during this Triple Crown run. And what's important to remember about Secretariat is the team behind him, right? You have a jockey in Ron Turcotte, a trainer in Lucien Lauren, both of whom were the jockey and trainer for the previous year's Derby and Belmont winner, Riva Ridge, who also came from the same stable that Secretariat did, Meadow Stable. So you have a proven team around Secretariat, and now it's a matter of putting all the pieces together and living up to the hype.
Yeah, I think most people, if they haven't gone back and read a lot about Secretariat, and Secretariat's probably the most famous racehorse of all time. So if you do know one, you probably know this one. But I think a lot of people don't realize that, like, he had lost a couple times. It's not like he was undefeated. We see a lot of horses now that aren't run a ton necessarily before the Derby, and they come in with perfect records, right? So, like, I just assumed the Secretariat would have been a horse like that, because we saw how dominant he was in 73. You just assume that just never lost a race, but that wasn't the case.
Yeah, and what you said before is exactly right. I think he's the most popular horse of all time by a wide margin. I mean, look no further than when Sports Century, ESPN Sports Century, did their top athletes of the century. Secretariat was one of them. Okay, a horse among all humans. So, but aside from that, you have what I think sets these memorable horses apart from the ones we see these days are the rivalries that happened. Like in this 73 Triple Crown, we're going to see Secretariat and we're going to see Sham, sort of battle it out here. We had Affirmed and Alidar, right? A little bit later in the 70s. You have these rivalries between these two horses that make, the Triple Crown races that much more exciting. These horses now, if they lose in the Derby, they're probably going to sit out in the Preakness and then come and try to dethrone the potential Triple Crown champion in the Belmont, right? You don't see that many horses, except for a horse that has a chance to win a Triple Crown, race in all three races.
Right, exactly. You mentioned he lost the Wood Memorial. Angle Light and Sham were the two that finished ahead of him. So he finished third. So obviously going into this race, those three were the favorites. Secretariat was the favorite. Sham was, I think, number 2. But they weren't, I was also kind of surprised. I would assume that Secretariat would have been a huge favorite too, like not knowing the history, not having read about it as much, and just, not being on top of the 73 Derby. I would just assume that he was a big favorite, but, while he was a favorite, he was, essentially not much ahead of Sham.
Yeah, Sham was a very well thought of horse. So Sham, ridden by Lafitte Pincay. So the jockey Lafitte Pincay, if you know one horse, you probably know Secretariat. If you know one jockey, it's probably Lafitte Pincay, because he was a great jockey and he has a very recognizable name. Ben, fun fact about me is I have a Lafitte Pincay bobblehead in my basement. So
that's amazing. Where did you get that?
I think my grandfather got it for me. He has a bunch of memorabilia from Santa Anita Racecourse in California, and he basically gave it all to me. And included in the box was a Lafitte Pincay bobblehead.
That's incredible.
So, yeah. So, I think it's his son. I'm not 100% sure what the relation is, but I think his son, or it's either his son or his nephew. I think it's his son. Is an announcer on the Triple Crown broadcast now on NBC. Okay. But so you'll hear that name here if you watch the races this year. But look, Sham is not a sham. It's probably the best way to put it. Legit contender to Secretariat, and Turcotte seemed to think hey, the race at the Wood Memorial was sort of an aberration. We got off to a bad start out of the gate. They actually showed the replay of the Wood Memorial a little bit here.
Yeah.
In this broadcast. The odds makers, though, I think thought there was a little more something to it. They didn't think there was that wide of a margin between Secretariat and the field.
Let's talk about the broadcast a little bit. CBS had the coverage. I don't know how much pre-race stuff they did. The video we'll have on the website is about 50 minutes total. So I don't know if they had about 20, 30 minutes lead-in time on CBS. It wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. I don't really know. But the broadcast itself, you'd think to 73, and we've watched some old events, right, Mike? We've, the Miracle on Ice, which is even, more recent than this. We've watched the Rumble in the Jungle. I thought the broadcast quality was pretty good, and I thought it was odd that this broadcast seemed like, if you had better quality and it was an HD, it seems very similar to something you see today.
Yeah, it's almost like they've repeated the same template since 1973. Obviously, there's wildly different personalities in the spots now announcing than there was in 1973, which I'm sure we'll get to. But same thing. We come into the broadcast. The first thing they show us are the twin Spires, which are beautiful, still in I don't know if you would even call it SD quality, but they still look beautiful, They still show the crowd when they first pan in, over 100,000 people, perfect day for racing. You have the regular announcer, Jack Whitaker. You have announcers announcing from the paddock, same areas around the race course. And you're right, the broadcast looks very similar to how it does now in terms of everything but picture quality.
Yeah, right. A couple notes on the broadcast. So Jack Whitaker was kind of anchoring the coverage. To me, I didn't really know Jack Whitaker. I didn't really know anybody on this broadcast, to be honest with you. But Jack Whitaker, who, now that we've kind of gone back and looked him up a little bit, he did a lot of stuff as a sportscaster. He actually was in World War II, fought in Normandy. Okay, so dude's a badass. But I thought the first thing I thought when I saw him, and everybody's dressed up for the Derby, but I thought he looked like a televangelist when I first saw him. I don't know if you got that sense at all, but he had like the big collar, the big flashy glasses, the hair kind of slicked back a little bit.
Yeah, when he started talking, I had said to myself, man, I feel like I should know this guy. Like I think we're gonna get slammed for not knowing who Jack Whitaker is, because he just was just a good announcer. And let's put it this way. On this broadcast, you had the three guys that were the main broadcasters for CBS were Jack, Chick, and Haywood. So that's what we're dealing with here. Jack, Chick, and Haywood sort of leading us through the broadcast. And I thought it was great, Ben, when Chick Anderson was going through the horses.
Yeah.
He would go through the horses, and then there'd be a unique drawing of the jockey on the horse, like really nice drawings for each horse. There was 13 horses in the race, the 99th running of this race, by the way.
Yeah. And
he even gave a shout out to the artist who drew the pictures after he was done reading them. He read every single horse.
It was amazing. Yeah, he's going through the field. I thought that was odd too. Like why not just show the horses? But they did have an artist draw them out, and they were nice pictures. But yeah, Chick Anderson, what a name! Like it's almost. I'm trying to remember the guy on Anchorman. What was the sports guy on Anchorman? I feel like his name was something like
Brick.
Brick. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I think it was Brick. I don't know. Another thing we're gonna get crushed for.
Well, no, Brick was the weatherman, right?
Oh, okay.
I'm thinking of Whammy. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I know who you're thinking of. I don't know.
But yeah, Chick Anderson, what a name. Another thing about the broadcast that kind of stood out now watching it, there was a ton of fans. So they set a new record, 163,000 or something, which they said about 100,000 in the infield. If you ever watched the Derby, you're not surprised by that. But it did break the attendance record. One thing I was surprised about though, now you equate the Kentucky Derby with fashion, right? Everybody's got to dress up. They got to throw on the wildest hat they have. I don't think I saw a single hat anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know when the hats became a thing. It's a very good point. I didn't see a hat anywhere, and I didn't see, but I did hear them mention mint juleps. So mint juleps have obviously been around a really long time, because they mentioned those a couple times in the broadcast. I heard them mention mint juleps. Hey, I have to ask you, what did you think about the guy? We'll get to Haywood here in a second, but I didn't get who was it? Haywood going around in the paddock and interviewing people right before the race?
Yeah.
It was Haywood, right?
Yeah.
He would like go around. He was in a plaid jacket, first of all, and he was going around like literally interrupting people's conversations and like asking them questions about their horse, like the trainers and the owners, like the kind of access he had in the paddock to the trainers and the owners and the jockeys was incredible. They would never get that access that close to post time in this day and age.
Yeah, we're talking like 25, 30 minutes out. And he's wandering around like that. Yeah, that was pretty remarkable as well. But the coverage was good. I mean, overall it was pretty solid. One thing a couple things that I learned in this, and I don't think they still do this, but I think it was Haywood mentioned that each horse has a number on its lip, like tattooed, like it's like a temporary tattoo on its upper lip that they were checking in the paddock as they came through to make sure the right horse was there. Have you ever heard of that? Did you number one? Did you pick that up?
I heard that. I didn't really understand the reason why, but now that you explain it, it makes sense. I sort of was lost a little bit when Haywood was explaining it, but yeah, I had never heard of that. What do they think they're going to pull a bait and switch?
Like I don't know if it was if they were expecting like somebody to. I mean, because you would obviously bring your best horse, right? Like why would you? I mean, you're going to bring a horse, I guess it's an older horse or something. I don't know if it was an actual, like, keep preventing some kind of fraud or whether, like, it was common for them just to ship the wrong horse to a venue. Like, I wasn't sure what to deal with that, but I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I never heard it before either. That's a good point to bring that up for sure. That's funny.
That's so weird. The other thing was, we're very familiar with my old Kentucky home. I didn't realize that is played, and I don't know if it's still the way. I've never heard this before, but I heard it on the broadcast, that as soon as the first horse steps foot on the track is when they play the song.
I know they play it when the horses are walking out, but I never know. I will this year, obviously, but I never noticed the timing of it, and I heard that as well.
Yeah, they never mention on the broadcast now, but there's so much more, I don't know, fluff to the broadcast now, and they always bring in every NBC celebrity they have to chime in on the broadcast. So that kind of stuff gets lost, but we do hear it obviously. But yeah, I thought that was interesting as well. So I'll learn that as well. Anything else, Mike? What else pre-race do we want to hit?
Yeah, one thing I'm not sure if they still do this. They made a special note to say that tents were set up around the track the night before, with people looking to get in for the next day. Does that still happen today?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know if they wait outside in line or not. I'm not sure. I actually think
they made it sound like it was like college kids, or young kids, waiting out in a tent all day, night the night before to get in for the next day. I never heard of that before. I wasn't sure if it still happens.
Yeah, I'm going to plead ignorance on that one as well. I don't know. Having not been before, I don't know that for sure.
Yeah,
but you would think that's something that you would know. Anything else, Mike, pre-race before you hop into the actual race itself?
Other than I don't know. You just from hearing the broadcast, perfect day, Kentucky Derby, first Saturday in May. Just hearing this stuff is getting me pumped up for Saturday, and it also got me pumped up in the moment to watch this race. So let's do it.
Yeah. So a couple things early on in this race, as they're loading them in, there's always a horse that goes crazy, right? It happened again in this one, which is crazy because I thought this was one of the worst kind of dust ups as you would see. Twice a Prince was the one that kind of reared up in the gate, and it looked like it was almost going to fall backwards out of the gate. Took him a minute to get everything settled, but that always seems to happen.
Yeah, and my man Twice a Prince, and even Navajo was going a little bit crazy as well. But yeah, it seemed like it was a little bit, like you said, a little bit more than normal. Oh, this horse just won't get in the gate. But they eventually figured it out.
Secretariat, who was in that 10 spot, the 10 post position, got off to a good start. One other note that I read after this, Mike, Sham, who ran a good race, obviously, which we're about to get to. Sham out of the gates, did you know this? When he took off, he hit his mouth on the gate and knocked out a couple of teeth when the race started.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
I mean, no, I guess
that's nothing that was picked up on the broadcast. No one said anything about that.
No. I mean, how would you notice that, right? I mean, it's so chaotic when those gates open and they take off. But he just hit his mouth against the gate, and then you saw him bump into Navajo a little bit, I think, as he kind of got going. But yeah, it turned out he ended up losing a couple of his teeth in that.
Well, and Ben, that's crazy, by the way. But Ben, one thing to make note of is, you mentioned that Secretariat came clean out of the gate. That's not anything to underscore because that's what did him in the Wood Memorial. He did not get out of the gate strong in the Wood Memorial, and it cost him. So big deal that he gets out of the gate clean. Yeah,
so Sham got off to a good start besides that, but Shecky Green was out ahead early and setting
amazing horse name.
Shecky Green, it is a great name. And he ran a good race early, set the pace early on, and Secretariat at the beginning, I mean, was towards the back of the pack, right after those first two turns into the back stretch in the back of the pack, and that's what I love, man. I was just waiting, I can't wait to see this horse turn it on, because when you see the greats, they just can pull in the field in such a hurry. And I also thought it was odd though when they were shooting this. I mean, now looking back, what Secretariat accomplished, but they still knew how good he was. I feel like they should have framed it a little bit better to kind of keep Secretariat in the shot, considering he was only 5th or 6th and not that far back. And I get it was SD, you're a little bit more limited back then, but I just thought they could have done a better job kind of framing him, because you don't really see him for a lot of the backstretch. You kind of see his nose a couple times, but then finally as they kind of get into that turn, you start seeing him close in.
Yeah, you're right. For a while, you're sitting there and you're like, he's not with the immediate pack. The top 4 horses were a little bit separated. But then, like you said, when he comes around the back stretch and into the turn, for the ride home there, you just see him and it's like, wow. You know what I mean? It's kind of I know me and you watch horse races, so I may be a little bit dramatic about this, but it's a beautiful thing to watch. I mean, there's just not many things in sports when there's a great horse, like just doing great things. It's just something that's like, it's like breathtaking. You know what I mean? And even though you knew what was going to happen in this race, I mean, we know how it ends, What I didn't know is how the race exactly played out. And, and just seeing how he comes, like you said, exactly right. He came from 6th. He had a clear path, coming on the backstretch, wins by 2 lengths pretty easily, I thought, over Sham. Did you think that way too?
I would say I was impressed with the way Sham kind of hung in there. I mean, Sham kind of took the lead out of that final turn, and Secretariat went kind of wide to kind of keep a clean track in front of him, and it was pretty neck and neck for a while. I was expecting him to pull away a little earlier. He did eventually pull away, but Sham had a heck of a race. I mean, you look at where Sham was compared to the rest of the field, and you kind of see how good he actually was.
Yeah, and look, and you bring up a good point about Sham and the race that Sham ran, because when you find out that Secretariat broke the Derby record with his time. So, as it turns out, my man Shecky Green set like a blistering pace out of the gate, which helps. If you're going to break a record, you kind of need that horse out there to set the pace. And Sham's race is made even more impressive by the fact when you find out that Secretariat broke the Derby record, 1 minute 59 and 2/5 seconds. I think the previous record was 2 minutes flat, if I'm not mistaken, they said. And he breaks a very old record. And I don't know what you thought about after the race, but it seemed like the trio of Turcotte, Lucien Lauren, and they interviewed Penny Chenery, who represent. If you've seen the Secretariat, the movie, I think you know who Penny Chenery is, one of the owners of Secretariat. They all just seemed very relieved.
Yeah.
Like they were nervous heading into the race, and it's like, okay, this is the horse we thought we had, and he ran a great race today.
Yeah, I think they said that he was purchased for $6 million. I believe that's what I heard.
Yep. So by Syndicate, yeah.
Yes, I mean obviously they had a huge investment in him, and this is what you're paying for to see him come through. But you mentioned the time, yeah. So 1:59 and 2/5. Northern Dancer was right at 2 minutes in 1964. The other thing that's remarkable about this is Sham also broke 2 minutes. So, like, if you look at the fastest Derby times, like if you go to the Kentucky Derby website, like, they're going to show the winners, right? The fastest Derby winners. I think that Sham's race, I mean, because Monarchos in 2001 was the only other horse to break 2 minutes. Did it at 1:59.97. So, as far as I know, Sham ran the second fastest Derby of all time. I could be wrong here, but I just doing the math and see when everybody else finished. That's what I come away with, and I don't think that's talked about at all. But if that's true, I mean, how gutting is that to have what would be the fastest time ever in the history of the Derby, if not for Secretariat, and you got nothing to show for it.
Oh, extremely gutting, but it adds to what would come in the Preakness, where now it's okay, Sham, and you have your rival for Secretariat now, which I think was important to come out of this race in Sham. And you're bringing up a lot of good points about Sham. The more you talk about it, I kind of see like, any other year could he have been the horse that made history?
Yeah, he could, I mean, very well could have. And it just speaks to how good Secretariat was, though, to win this race with the other horse breaking 2 minutes.
Yeah, the other horse breaking 2 minutes, and Secretariat, he wins by 2 lengths. And I don't know, he didn't look particularly stressed down the stretch,
Right.
Sort of cruised. Did you think? I thought it was awesome when they interviewed Ron Turcotte, the jockey, and they actually replayed the race with him watching it, describing the different maneuvers that he made with Secretariat in different parts of the track to win the race.
Yeah,
I thought that was a pretty cool interview.
Yeah, I did too. That was good coverage. But while we're talking broadcast, I still can't get the actual race itself is exactly the same. Like everything you see. I don't know if that's just this. I don't know if that's because like they have to be careful where they put cameras and like just because it might interfere with the horses or be a distraction. But I just don't know how there's not a better setup to capture the race than the long shot from the home stretch shooting across the track to the back stretch, right? Really zoomed in. Like how is there not some other perspective of this race that we just don't get. I mean, to this day, like, that's what we see. We see that, there's a shot in the turn one, and then you kind of see him going around turn one, then you just have that tight shot all the way down the backstretch. How is there not anything else any other views or angles of this now?
Yeah, every other sport in the last, what was this, 50 years ago almost?
Yeah.
Almost 50 years ago. Every other sport has drastically changed the way it's broadcasted, but horse racing.
And
it's every horse race. When we're watching, what are some of these tracks we watch, Ben? When we're on the app. Oh, jeez, I don't want to say.
What's the one in West Virginia that we?
Charlestown. When we're watching Charlestown on a Wednesday night in October on the syndicated feed or whatever, it's still the same camera angles as it was in 1973 Kentucky Derby and as it will be in a couple days for the 2021 Kentucky Derby. It's like it's the same camera shots every time. You're exactly right.
Yeah, pretty remarkable. But a great race overall. I wanted to add a couple things on Jack Whitaker before we got out of here, because I was doing a little reading as we were discussing here. A couple of interesting notes on Jack Whitaker, and I think it's worth mentioning before we get out of here. So he got banned, and I think we talked about this during one of our Masters minisodes. He got banned from covering the Masters because he's the one that said, "Here comes the mob," when the gallery was closing in on the 18th hole. And, the Masters obviously has it's a huge no-no to call the gallery a mob or to call the gallery anything but patrons, right? So he was banned from the Masters.
Wow, I do remember talking about that. We did for those who don't know, we did an episode on how the television coverage of the Masters has evolved over the years. And I do remember talking about that. And we went over the different rules that the course has. And they hold the broadcasters to. And once you break one of those rules, you're just out.
Yeah, and he was the guy that actually got invited back as a spectator, and then when the broadcasters got sick, he took over and then continued to broadcast in the following year. So
that's probably where I recognize his name from.
There you go.
Yeah,
the other cool thing about him was he just passed away in 2019, lived to the age of 95, which is remarkable. But when Dick Enberg passed away in 2017, Whitaker was the only living play-by-play announcer from the first 21 Super Bowls.
Wow.
So we've obviously heard about him a number of times, but just didn't come to mind immediately seeing him in this coverage.
Wow, that's interesting.
All right, so as we mentioned, we're not going to talk much about what happens after the race because we're going to spend some time on that on future episodes. We've got the Preakness coming up next. We're going to watch the Preakness and the Belmont from 73, the week of each of those races. So we got that coming up in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think this is a cool new concept we're doing here. So we have the Kentucky Derby this week off, and then the following week we'll do the Preakness. But hey, look, in between the weeks of the Triple Crown, we're still going to be doing our normal game episodes, So don't think we're not going to do a podcast those weeks. We're just not going to do horse racing related content those weeks. So we'll still be bringing you our weekly dose of episodes as we go along here. And one thing for you guys to watch for, the last 5 or 6 minutes of the 5th video, I want you all to go watch the guy explaining how the horses get drug tested. An absolutely fascinating and random part of this broadcast that I think you'll all get a laugh out of.
When they were in the detention center or something, he called it? Is that what you're talking about?
I forget what he called it, but it was, exactly. After the race, they go to the area to get drug tested to make sure they're legit. Hilarious part of the broadcast that was pretty much shoehorned in right at the end.
It really was. You never see that. It was pretty crazy. And they were wiping down the horses, cooling them off, and one of the horses was trying to kick the dude the entire time, and he was just shrugging it off like it was nothing. It was tremendous. Good broadcast overall, and a lot of fun going back to watch Secretariat and kind of seeing how this coverage unfolded. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the Preakness is framed heading into that race, with Secretariat having won this one in the fashion that he did, and then again following it up a couple weeks after that with the Belmont. So looking forward to this, Mike.
Yep, and God bless the guy who has all of these on his YouTube channel. There's one guy who has all these races on his YouTube channel, and he's a lifesaver.
We do appreciate him. Hey, while you're on our YouTube channel, please subscribe, leave us a comment, like the video, and wherever you listen to us, whatever podcasting app, please subscribe there as well, rate and review, follow us, whatever it is you need to do. We would greatly appreciate that.
Until next time.